Come on in. I have not done one of these in a while, but I got a minute tonight, so y'all come on and let's talk for a minute. As you come in, say hello, and please, please, please do me the honor of hitting the share button. Walter Williams, sir, how you doing? It's good to see you, man. Hope everything is going well with you. Yeah, y'all come on in. So listen, I haven't done one of these in a while. Y'all know or if you don't know, I am in the last semester of seminary, and so your brother has been quite busy, and so, but I feel inspired today. Now, I just want y'all to come on in again. As you come in, make sure you say hello. Please hit the share button. So I really just want to spend a few minutes. Anthony, how you doing, sir? Spend a few minutes talking about what I call relationship roots. And very simply put, I want to talk a minute about how we get to how we maintain healthy relationships, what the root, as we know, of relationships are, and how we, as men and women. What's up, Terrence? How you doing? Will, how you doing, man? Good to see you, brother. How we as men and women can do a good job, a better job of really getting down to the root of some of the issues that we have. So really, the genesis of this discussion is I have been seeing, and we've been talking a lot about some different areas of relationships. So we've been seeing this week. Of course, the dominant story is what's going on with Dwayne Wade and his family, and everybody got something to say about that. All of a sudden, my back started itching, and I'm not going to even address that because that's not even really important. However, what I do think we need to talk about as men is how do we, as men and women, how do we maintain, Mr. Newman, how do we maintain healthy relationships? How do we present? How do we deal with conflict? How do we walk through? How do we walk through it to a point where we get to a healthy relationship? Oh, what I was saying, the two things. So we saw that, but what I have been watching this Netflix show called Love Is Blind. And I don't know if y'all have seen that, but if you have not, it's a very interesting show. I'm a couple of episodes in, but the thesis or the main objective of this show is that they take men and women and they introduce them, they try to pair them up, but the catch is they don't see each other. So the idea is that if you make a deep emotional connection first before you try to make a physical connection, then you will, then relationships will last longer. So it's like, okay, interesting theory. And I somewhat agree that it's important for us to have, God bless you too, man. That it's very important that we have emotional connections before we have physical connections, which is why biblically we are taught to wait to have sex until marriage. That's different. But really what it comes down to, what our relationships come down to, what maintaining strong relationships and even friendships come down to is really one word. And that word is selflessness. It's selflessness. And the real main problem we have is that everybody in relationships at some point becomes selfish when we are supposed to always be in a position of being selfless. This is why the model of Jesus is so is the right model to learn from, because we see Jesus who has power, who has authority, who has ability to give up his position for the benefit of having a relationship, a marriage with us. And so that's the perfect model, is that as men and women, we have to be in position or remain in position where anytime conflict comes up, anytime a decision needs to be made, anytime we get ready to do something, we have to, our first thought cannot be, how does this affect me? But we have to go into it thinking, how does this affect we? And if we don't do that, what we will do is when we remain in a place of selfishness, what we will do is we will make decisions, we'll make one-sided decisions, not thinking as to how this decision is going to affect the other person. And when you do that for long enough time, in essence, what you're going to do is you're going to isolate the other person and relegate them to a position, to an afterthought. And nobody wants to be in a relationship where they are an afterthought. The other problem with being selfish in a relationship with anybody is that when we are selfish in relationships, what we do is we literally deteriorate the trust that is necessary to keep the bond of the relationship going. And you guys know, if you don't know, John Gottman writes, hey Lisa, how you doing? John Gottman writes that without trust in a relationship, there is no relationship. If we can't trust that the other person is thinking about us in the decision-making process, if we can't trust that the other person whom we are in relationship with has us on their mind, if we can't trust that the other person who we're in relationship with is not making decisions solely for their benefit, but sees how this decision or this action or this activity is going to affect us, it's going to affect both of us. So what does that look like? What does selflessness look like? Selflessness looks like you don't like something, but you are willing to do it or to compromise because you know that the other person, this is something that feeds or benefits or helps the other person. Again, this does not mean, and the flip side of that is the other person in this decision is thinking about how this decision is going to affect and feed you. So now, and this makes compromise easy, because if both of you are thinking of the other person, then what inevitably happens is you do reach a compromise or a consensus, instead of what typically happens is the person in the relationship who feels the strongest about that topic or subject, or the person who can argue better about that topic or that topic, usually is the person who wins, and the other person typically just gives in because they don't see a way that they can win. Y'all see that? So now what happens is we, instead of turning into a unit that makes a decision together where both people benefit from the end result, what you actually have is what you actually wind up having something where one person gets what they want and the other person sits there in misery or resentment because now they feel like they have not been heard. They feel like that the other person wasn't thinking about them. They feel like that the other person made a selfish decision instead of making a selfless decision, or they made a decision that was best for them. And it doesn't mean that it was best for them. Now, let me also give the caveat that this does not mean that every decision that's made has to be a compromise. Sometimes there are going to be decisions in relationships that you initially don't like, or that initially, don't benefit you, or maybe, I won't say that, but maybe have some pain in them for you, but the long-term outcome, what's up, Klein, of those decisions are that they are beneficial for the relationship. So let me give you an example of that. A good example of that is if you are in a relationship and say your your spouse needs, your partner needs to go back to school. I'll use that. That mean if they have to go back to school, that might mean for that time period they're unable to work, which affects you might having to work more, you might having to not go on trips, you might not having to shop like you normally would. It might affect that. However, in the long run, you know that this sacrifice that you are making is beneficial for both. So there's pain in the decision, but ultimately, you know that in the long run, it's a good decision. Why is my throat hurting? Goodness. So selflessness versus selfishness. So what do you do? So here's the other interesting thing. We talked about, I said earlier that what happens also is that when selfishness happens, it erodes the trust of the relationship. So anytime that trust that we come to a position or a place in a relationship where where trust becomes a problem, then there is a process that we must take. So anytime something, and this is the purpose of dating, by the way. So the purpose of dating is to walk through seasons and times where the areas at which we don't have trust, or the areas that we don't have security come up. And so we get the opportunity to walk through them. So really, trust is really the same as, again, it's just you don't have any type of security. So what does that look like? What that looks like is, it looks like a situation comes up, you don't understand, you don't necessarily agree, and so when you don't agree, you walk through again, or you don't necessarily believe the other person. You have to now deal with the fact that there is not trust. Now, anytime mistrust comes up, you got to ask yourself two questions before and these two questions will determine how you handle the situation. The first question you have to ask yourself is, am I not trusting this person because they have a history of making bad decisions? Or have they given me reason to not trust them? And so if the answer to that question is no, this person has not given me a reason to not trust them, or this person does not have a history of making bad decisions, then the second question you have to ask yourself is the reason for my mistrust because there is something that had happened in my past where this area is exposing an insecurity or an inferiority, a place of insecurity or inferiority in myself. Let me first say that's not bad if the answer to that question is yes. If the answer to that question is yes, that is not a bad thing. All of us, every human being in the world, I don't care what they say, has a place of where they feel insecure or inferior. That's normal. That is human nature. So once you're able to discern which one of those two it is, that determines how you approach it. Either way, you're going to approach the other person and tell them how you feel. However, if it is a scenario where the person has consistently given you a reason not to trust them, then you approach that person and say, I need more information. I need more data. I need more context to help me understand how you came to this answer. I need to understand your thought process. I need to understand what details helped you come to this response. And then listen. You don't ask in an attacking way. You don't ask in a way that's demeaning or demoralizing, but you are literally asking so you can get more information. And this is important because as you do this, and you do this the right way, especially if you're talking to a man, as you do this, what you help this other person do is you help them either affirm their decision, or you help them realize that they haven't adequately thought through their decision. And again, you're not trying to poke holes at their argument. This isn't a legal battle. This is a fact-finding mission that you are on. You're trying to find out, if you think that this is a good decision, help me, walk me through how you came to this decision so I can be on board. We cannot, in relationships, say things to our partners like, just shut up and do what I say. That doesn't work. You can't do that and still expect to maintain or build trust. In that moment, when your partner asks you that, that is the opportunity to sit down and walk through and be honest and walk through how you come to the decision. Now, if the answer is, and sometimes this is a fair answer, I don't really have a whole lot of facts, but something in my gut is telling me this is the right decision, then you have to say that. And you have to be open to your partner disagreeing with you, and you all still talk through it. However, again, if you're on the same page, if you consistently make good decisions, if you make bad decisions, but you consistently stand there and work through them and fix them and don't run from them, again, that's going to help build trust. But you got to have that conversation. Flip side, say it is a thing where an insecurity in you or an inferiority in you comes up, and that's why you're not trusting, then your response is to then go and deal with your insecurity and your inferiority and leave your partner alone. Now, you still can and should ask for more information and more data, but understanding the purpose of gathering information and gathering data in that discussion is not to try to get them to explain, but again, to help you deal with your insecurity and your inferiority, which again, let me say again, is not a bad thing. All of us have a place in our life where there is some insecurity or some form of inferiority. We might not want to admit it. We're not going to post it on Facebook, but it's just the reality, okay? So we got to deal with that. And ultimately, again, that word selflessness is important, because even in that moment, if you are being selfless, then your selflessness gives you a level of humility where you can go to your partner and say, babe, I just don't get it. Or I need you to trust me because this is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm feeling. Let's work it out. And then you can come to some kind of compromise. Again, it is the root of relationship. The root of relationships is selflessness. If you can maintain a posture of selflessness, if you can maintain a posture of humility, if you can maintain what that does, that maintains a space of trust. And when you have trust in your relationship, then you can work through hard situations together and actually come out stronger, because you were able to be more vulnerable with one another. You were able to think together. You were able to come together and share ideas because you both felt heard, because now there is you understand your roles better in each other's lives, because your purposes have been ignited or have been pulled on, because you find out that your partner has gifts that you might not have known or hadn't been exercised in a while. So it is invaluable that we remain in a space of selflessness. Selfishness is the killer of every relationship. Selfishness, is the killer for every relationship. If we can get rid of selfishness and remain humble and remain selfless, remain servants, then we can make it in our relationships. All right, y'all. That's all I got. I'll talk to y'all later. I hope y'all have a good night.